Blood trickled from Amara's nose as she regained consciousness, the flight attendant's smirk hovering above her. Then the captain's voice crackled. "Mr. Ellington, our sincere apologies. We have your daughter." Amara saw her father's silhouette in the cabin doorway. Everything would change now. Before we dive into this shocking story, where are you watching from today? Hit that like button and subscribe if you want more true stories of justice being served. The discrimination this young girl faced will make your blood boil. But wait, until you see what happens when her powerful father steps in. 12-year-old Amara Johnson clutched her boarding pass tightly, her stomach fluttering with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. This was her first time flying alone, a milestone that marked her growing independence. The destination made it even more special. She was heading to San Francisco to spend 2 weeks with her father, Malcolm Johnson, the newly appointed CEO of Horizon Technologies. His recent promotion had made headlines as the first black executive to lead the Fortune 500 company, an achievement that filled Amara with immense pride. "You have everything, sweetie," her mother Tasha asked, adjusting the colorful beaded braids framing Amara's face. They stood at the security checkpoint at Atlanta International Airport, the farthest point non-passengers could go. "Yes, Mom," Amara replied, patting her backpack. "Passport, boarding pass, phone charger, and Dad's address. Plus 20 emergency dollars in my shoe like you taught me." Tasha smiled, though worry lines creased her forehead. The divorce had been amicable 2 years ago, with both parents committed to raising Amara together despite the geographical distance. Malcolm's demanding career meant Amara lived primarily with her mother in Atlanta, but they maintained a close relationship through regular visits and video calls. "Text me when you board and when you land," Tasha reminded her, pulling Amara into a tight embrace. "Your father will be waiting right at the gate." After a final hug and kiss, Amara joined the security line, turning back once to wave at her mother before disappearing into the crowd. The security process went smoothly, and Amara made her way to the gate with plenty of time to spare. She bought a magazine from a newsstand, the cover featuring an interview with her father about breaking barriers in the tech industry. When boarding began for first-class passengers, Amara joined the line, ticket in hand. Her father had insisted on the upgrade to ensure she'd receive extra attention as an unaccompanied minor. The gate agent smiled warmly, scanning her boarding pass. "Enjoy your flight, Miss Johnson," the agent said. "The flight attendants will take good care of you." Stepping onto the plane, Amara was greeted by 2 flight attendants. The first, a younger woman with a kind smile and Jessica Parker on her name tag, welcomed her aboard. The second, an older woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and sharp features, glanced at Amara's first-class ticket with narrowed eyes. "I need to see your boarding pass again," said the second attendant, whose name tag read Rachel Whitman. Amara handed it over, maintaining her polite demeanor. "I'm traveling to see my dad in San Francisco." Rachel scrutinized the boarding pass longer than seemed necessary. "Are you sure you're in the right seat? First class is for premium passengers." "Yes, ma'am. My dad booked it for me." "I'm seat 3, Amara replied, trying to keep her voice steady despite the implication. "Rachel, I've got her on the manifest as an unaccompanied minor in first class," Jessica interjected, checking her tablet. "Everything's in order." With a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes, Rachel handed back the boarding pass. "Very well. This way." Amara followed Rachel to her window seat, settling in and placing her backpack under the seat in front. She noticed Rachel checking other passengers' boarding passes with just a quick glance, her demeanor noticeably warmer. The contrast wasn't lost on Amara, but she focused on her magazine instead, determined to enjoy the flight. A middle-aged white businessman took the aisle seat beside her, introducing himself as Benjamin Hayes. He seemed friendly, mentioning he was heading to San Francisco for a conference. "First time flying alone?" he asked kindly. Amara nodded. "Yes, but I'm excited. My dad lives in San Francisco." Their conversation was interrupted when Rachel returned to their row. "Sir, can I get you a pre-flight beverage?" she asked Benjamin, with a warm smile completely ignoring Amara. "Thank you. Orange juice would be great," Benjamin replied, then added, "and perhaps one for my young neighbor here." Rachel's smile tightened. "Of course," she said, though her tone had cooled considerably. When she returned with the drinks, she placed Benjamin's carefully on his tray, but practically slid Amara's across the tray, causing a few drops to spill. As the remaining passengers boarded, Amara observed Rachel's interactions. The flight attendant chatted amiably with white passengers, cooed over a white toddler, and helped an elderly white woman with her bag. When a black businessman in a suit requested assistance with his carry-on, Rachel pointed him to the overhead bin without offering help. The safety demonstration began, and the plane pushed back from the gate. Amara texted her mother as promised, "Boarding complete. Taking off soon. Love you." As the plane taxied, Amara gazed out the window at the sprawling airport, her excitement building despite Rachel's cold treatment. The powerful engines roared to life, pressing her back against the seat as they accelerated down the runway. Moments later, they were airborne, Atlanta shrinking beneath them as they climbed into the clouds. Amara opened her book, a fantasy novel her father had recommended, and tried to lose herself in the story. The flight to San Francisco would take over 4 hours, and she was determined not to let Rachel's behavior ruin her experience. Still, she couldn't help but notice the flight attendant's eyes lingering on her whenever she passed by, as if waiting for Amara to make a mistake. An hour into the flight, the meal service began in first class. Rachel and Jessica worked their way through the cabin, distributing warm towels and taking drink orders. Amara closed her book and raised her tray table, waiting patiently for her turn. When Rachel reached Benjamin, she took his order with a pleasant expression. "And what can I get you to drink, sir?" "Coffee black, please," Benjamin replied. Rachel nodded and started to move away without acknowledging Amara. "Excuse me," Amara said politely. "May I have an apple juice, please?" Rachel continued down the aisle as if she hadn't heard. Amara glanced at Benjamin, who raised his eyebrows in surprise. When Rachel returned with his coffee, Amara tried again. "I'm sorry, but I didn't get to order. Could I have an apple juice, please?" Rachel's lips pressed into a thin line. "I'm very busy serving all the passengers. You'll need to wait your turn without being so demanding." Heat rose to Amara's cheeks at the unfair accusation. She hadn't been demanding at all, just asking for the same service everyone else was receiving. She sat back in her seat, trying to hide her discomfort. Benjamin, who had witnessed the exchange, frowned. When Jessica passed by with a tray of drinks moments later, he flagged her down. "Excuse me, the young lady hasn't been served yet," he pointed out. Jessica looked surprised. "Oh, I'm sorry about that. What would you like, sweetie?" "Apple juice, please," Amara replied softly. Coming right up, Jessica assured her with a kind smile. When Jessica returned with Amara's juice, Rachel was close behind, her expression darkening. As Amara took her first sip, a voice from behind her seat interrupted the moment. "Excuse me, flight attendant." Rachel hurried over to the woman seated behind Amara, a middle-aged white passenger with a pinched expression. "Yes, ma'am. This girl's seat is reclined too far back. It's pressing against my knees," the woman complained, gesturing toward Amara. Confused, Amara glanced at her seat controls. She hadn't touched them since takeoff, and the seat was in its default position. Rachel didn't bother to check. "Miss, you need to bring your seat forward immediately. You're disturbing other passengers." "But I didn't recline it," Amara explained. "It's still in the takeoff position." "Don't argue with me," Rachel snapped. "Put your seat upright now." Benjamin intervened again. "Actually, her seat hasn't been reclined at all. I've been sitting next to her the whole time." Rachel shot him a cold glare. "Sir, please don't involve yourself in matters that don't concern you." She turned back to Amara. "Seat forward now. And it needs to stay that way for the remainder of the flight." Feeling humiliated, Amara pushed the button to bring her seat even more upright than the standard position, forcing her to sit uncomfortably straight. The woman behind her smirked with satisfaction. "Thank you for addressing this, Rachel," the woman said, reading the flight attendant's name tag. "Some people just don't understand proper airplane etiquette." "You're welcome, Mrs. Lawson," Rachel replied warmly. "Please let me know if you need anything else." As Rachel walked away, Amara blinked back tears. She pulled out her phone, needing to text her father about what was happening. The signal was spotty, but she managed to type, "Dad, one of the flight attendants is being really mean to me. Don't think I did anything wrong." The message showed as sending, but didn't complete due to the inconsistent signal. Amara was about to try again when Rachel materialized beside her. "Cell phones need to be in airplane mode during the flight," she said sharply. "That's a serious security violation." "It is in airplane mode," Amara explained, showing her the screen. "I was just trying to write a message to send later." Phones should be completely off during critical phases of flight, Rachel insisted, though they were now cruising at altitude when device use was permitted. "Put it away immediately, or I'll have to confiscate it." "But the captain said small electronics are allowed now," Benjamin pointed out. "I've been using my tablet since we reached cruising altitude." Rachel ignored him. "This is your final warning," she told Amara. "Put the phone away." Reluctantly, Amara slipped her phone into her pocket, feeling increasingly isolated. The unfair treatment was becoming more blatant with each interaction, and she didn't understand why Rachel had targeted her. As she turned back to her book, she caught Rachel watching her with unmistakable disdain, leaving her with a growing sense of dread about the remainder of the flight. Halfway through the flight, the seatbelt sign illuminated with a soft ding as the plane entered a patch of turbulence. The captain's voice came over the intercom, advising all passengers to remain seated until the rough air subsided. Amara had been sipping water steadily throughout the flight, and now she felt the uncomfortable pressure of a full bladder. She squirmed in her seat, trying to ignore the sensation. Benjamin noticed her discomfort. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. "I really need to use the bathroom," Amara whispered back. "But the seatbelt sign is on." "Just hold on a bit longer," Benjamin advised. "I'm sure it'll be turned off soon." The minutes stretched on painfully. Amara crossed her legs tightly, focusing on her breathing to distract herself from the increasing discomfort. After what felt like an eternity, the turbulence subsided and the seatbelt sign turned off with another gentle ding. Amara immediately unfastened her belt and stood up. "Excuse me," she said to Benjamin, who quickly moved his legs to let her into the aisle. She headed toward the first-class lavatory, which showed a vacant sign. Before she could reach it, Rachel stepped directly into her path. "Where do you think you're going?" Rachel demanded, arms crossed. "To the bathroom, please," Amara replied urgently. "I really need to go." "The bathrooms are off limits right now," Rachel stated, though the seatbelt sign was clearly off. "But the sign went off," Amara pointed out, shifting from foot to foot. "I've been waiting a long time. We're expecting more turbulence." "Return to your seat immediately," Rachel insisted. Amara was about to protest further when she noticed a white girl, perhaps 8 or 9 years old, emerge from the economy section and approach the lavatory. To Amara's astonishment, Rachel stepped aside with a smile, allowing the child to enter without comment. "Wait," Amara said, confusion and frustration mounting. "You just let her go in. Why can't I use the bathroom too?" Rachel's eyes narrowed. "Are you questioning my authority? The rules are different for unaccompanied minors in first class. Now go back to your seat." "That doesn't make any sense," Amara replied, her voice quivering with both desperation and indignation. "Please, I really need to go." "I won't tell you again," Rachel hissed, lowering her voice. "Go back to your seat or there will be consequences." When Amara didn't move immediately, Rachel grabbed her upper arm fingers, digging in painfully. The sudden contact startled Amara, who winced at the tight grip. "Ow, you're hurting me," she gasped. The commotion drew attention from nearby passengers. Benjamin had been watching the interaction and now stood up. "Excuse me," he called out. "Is there a problem here?" Rachel didn't release Amara's arm. "This is not your concern, sir. I'm handling an unruly passenger." Unruly Benjamin echoed in disbelief. "She's a child who needs to use the restroom. You're the one manhandling her." Other passengers began to take notice of the confrontation. A woman, several rows back, stood up to get a better view. Rachel's grip tightened on Amara's arm as she began forcibly walking her back toward her seat. "If you don't sit down, sir," she threatened Benjamin, "I'll report you as a disruptive passenger as well." Tears sprang to Amara's eyes from both pain and humiliation. "Please let go," she whispered. When they reached the row, Rachel finally released her arm, leaving angry red marks on Amara's dark skin. "Stay in your seat," she ordered. "If you get up again without permission, we'll have security meet the plane in San Francisco." Benjamin stood in the aisle, blocking Rachel's path. "What you're doing is completely inappropriate," he said firmly. "I'd like to speak with the captain." Rachel's face flushed with anger. "Return to your seat immediately, or I will call for restraints." The threat hung in the air, shocking the passengers within earshot. Benjamin reluctantly sat down, but not before saying loudly enough for others to hear, "This is blatant discrimination." Rachel turned to address the now attentive section of the cabin. "We have a disruptive young passenger who is threatening flight safety," she announced. "Everything is under control, but please remain in your seats and follow crew instructions." Amara sat frozen in shock. The accusation was so blatantly false that she couldn't believe Rachel had said it. More tears spilled down her cheeks as she realized the extent of the flight attendant's hostility. "That's not true," she said, her voice barely audible. "One more word," Rachel warned, leaning close enough that only Amara could hear, "and I'll make sure you regret it." As Rachel walked away, Benjamin turned to Amara. "This is completely unacceptable," he said, keeping his voice low. "Are you okay? Do you want me to write down what's happening?" Amara nodded, wiping away tears. Her arm throbbed where Rachel had grabbed her, and she still desperately needed the bathroom. Worse than the physical discomfort was the feeling of powerlessness and injustice. She had done nothing wrong, yet she was being treated like a dangerous criminal. "Why is she doing this to me?" Amara whispered. Benjamin's expression was grim. "Because she thinks she can get away with it." "But she's wrong." Rachel strode to the galley where Jessica was preparing the mid-flight snack service. Their hushed conversation was punctuated by Rachel's animated gestures toward Amara's seat. Jessica glanced over, her expression concerned. "Is this really necessary, Rachel?" Jessica asked, her voice low. "She's just a kid." "Trust me, I know this type," Rachel insisted. "She's been difficult since boarding. We need to contain the situation before it escalates." Jessica hesitated. "Maybe we should just let her use the bathroom. That seems reasonable." "And reward her behavior?" "Absolutely not." Rachel shook her head firmly. "Look, let's just move her away from the other passengers. That'll solve the immediate problem." "I suppose that might defuse things," Jessica conceded reluctantly. "There are empty rows in the back of economy." The two flight attendants approached Amara's seat. Benjamin straightened, watching them warily. "Miss Johnson," Rachel announced, "for the comfort of other passengers, we're relocating you to another seating area." Amara looked up in shock. "What? Why?" "This isn't a discussion," Rachel replied coldly. "Gather your things and come with us." "I didn't do anything wrong," Amara protested, fresh tears threatening. Benjamin intervened again. "This is ridiculous. She hasn't done anything disruptive." Rachel ignored him, addressing Amara directly. "Either you come willingly, or we'll need to take more serious measures." Terrified by the implied threat, Amara stood shakily. Her bladder was painfully full, now adding physical distress to her emotional turmoil. "Can I please use the bathroom first?" she pleaded. "After we relocate you," Rachel stated. Jessica at least had the decency to look uncomfortable with the situation. "Your things will be safe," she assured Amara, referring to the backpack still tucked under the seat. "I need my bag," Amara insisted. "My phone and my book are in there." "You can retrieve your belongings later," Rachel said dismissively. "This is standard protocol for disruptive passengers." Are you shocked by Rachel's behavior so far? Comment number 1 if you think this kind of discrimination still happens every day. Comment number 2 if you've ever witnessed something similar on a flight. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see justice served in this story. What do you think will happen next? Will anyone stand up for Amara, or will things get even worse before they get better? Keep watching to find out. With no choice, Amara followed the flight attendants toward the back of the plane. As they moved through business class into economy, passengers stared openly at the young girl with tear-stained cheeks being escorted by 2 flight attendants. The walk felt like a perp walk designed to humiliate her further. They reached an empty row near the rear of the plane, far from the nearest occupied seats. The engines were louder here, and the ride considerably bumpier. "Sit here," Rachel instructed, pointing to the middle seat. "You'll remain here for the duration of the flight." "My dad is meeting me at the gate," Amara said, her voice trembling. "He needs to know where I am." "We'll handle that," Rachel replied dismissively. "Jessica, please return to first class. I'll handle this." Jessica hesitated. "Are you sure this is—" "I've got it under control," Rachel cut her off. "Go." After Jessica departed, Rachel leaned close to Amara. "Let me make something clear. Your behavior has been unacceptable from the start. Demanding special treatment, disrupting other passengers, questioning crew authority, these are serious infractions." "I didn't do any of those things," Amara protested, pulling out her phone. "I'm recording this. My dad will want to know what happened." Rachel's face contorted with anger. She snatched the phone from Amara's hands. "Cell phone use is a security violation," she snapped. "I'm confiscating this for the remainder of the flight." "You can't take my phone," Amara cried, reaching for it. "I need to contact my dad." "This is exactly the kind of behavior I'm talking about," Rachel said, holding the phone out of reach. "Argumentative, disrespectful, and now attempting to create a false narrative. This device will be secured until landing." "Please," Amara begged, desperation evident in her voice. "That's my only way to reach my father." "You should have thought about that before causing problems on my flight," Rachel replied coldly. She slipped the phone into her uniform pocket. "It will be returned after we land, assuming there are no further incidents." Rachel turned to leave, but Amara called after her. "Can I at least use the bathroom now, please?" Without turning around, Rachel replied, "The lavatory in this section is out of order. You'll have to wait." It was a blatant lie. Amara could see passengers using the economy bathroom from where she sat, but she was too afraid to challenge Rachel again, especially now that she was completely isolated. Left alone, Amara huddled in the unfamiliar seat, surrounded by empty rows. She felt abandoned, targeted, and utterly helpless. Without her phone or her belongings, she had no way to communicate with the outside world. No way to tell her father what was happening. No way to document the injustice she was experiencing. Periodically, Rachel walked by to check on her, each time making a condescending comment. "Comfortable. This is what happens when children don't know their place." Still pouting. "That won't get you anywhere. Your attitude is only making things worse for yourself." Each remark was designed to reinforce Amara's powerlessness and Rachel's control over the situation. The isolation tactic was working. Cut off from supportive passengers like Benjamin, Amara felt increasingly vulnerable. After what felt like an eternity, Amara saw Jessica approaching with a cup of water, a small kindness that nearly broke the emotional dam Amara had been building to keep herself from completely falling apart. "Here," Jessica said quietly, handing her the cup. "Thought you might be thirsty." "Thank you," Amara whispered, her throat dry from crying. "Can I please have my phone back? Or at least go to the bathroom?" Jessica glanced over her shoulder, checking for Rachel. "I'll see what I can do about the bathroom. As for the phone, Rachel has it locked in a compartment up front." Before Jessica could say more, Rachel appeared at the end of the aisle. She frowned at the scene. "Is there a problem here, Jessica?" she called out. "Just offering water," Jessica replied, stepping back from Amara. "I've got this section covered," Rachel said dismissively. "You're needed in first class." As Jessica walked away, Rachel approached Amara, eyeing the cup of water. "Finished with that?" she asked, reaching for it before Amara could respond. In the handoff, Rachel accidentally tilted the cup, spilling water across Amara's lap. The cold liquid soaked through her jeans immediately. "Oh dear," Rachel said, not bothering to hide her smirk. "How clumsy of you." "I didn't." Amara began, then stopped herself. There was no point in protesting. Rachel was deliberately tormenting her, and nothing she said would change that. Standing up to try to dry herself, Amara was immediately shoved back into the seat by Rachel's hand on her shoulder. "Sit down," Rachel ordered. "Passengers must remain seated when instructed by crew members." "I'm just trying to dry off," Amara explained, her voice breaking. "I said sit down," Rachel repeated, pushing her again with enough force that Amara's head knocked against the window. Pain blossomed where her head had hit, and Amara couldn't hold back the tears any longer. She began sobbing openly, overwhelmed by the pain, humiliation, and injustice of her situation. "Stop that ridiculous display," Rachel hissed. "You're not fooling anyone with those crocodile tears." Through her tears, Amara noticed a passenger several rows ahead, watching the interaction with visible concern. It gave her a glimmer of hope that perhaps someone would finally intervene on her behalf. The next hour passed in miserable silence. Amara's clothes had dried uncomfortably. Her bladder pain had become nearly unbearable, and her head throbbed where it had struck the window. Rachel continued her periodic check-ins, each time making degrading comments about children who don't know their place or learning valuable lessons about respect. During one such visit, Amara gathered her courage. "Please, I really need water. I'm so thirsty." Rachel studied her for a moment, as if weighing whether to deny this basic request. Finally, she nodded. "I'll be right back." When Rachel returned with a plastic cup of water, Amara reached for it gratefully. As she took her first sip, Rachel deliberately bumped the bottom of the cup, causing water to splash across Amara's face and shirt. "Oops," Rachel said with mock concern. Turbulence. The plane was flying smoothly. Water dripping from her chin, Amara stood up instinctively to avoid more liquid soaking her already damp clothes. The sudden movement caused Rachel to step back. "I told you to stay seated," Rachel snapped, grabbing Amara's shoulder and forcefully shoving her back down. The rough handling was the final straw for Amara. "Stop pushing me. You can't keep doing this." "Sit down and be quiet," Rachel ordered, her voice rising. "No, I need to dry off and use the bathroom." Amara stood again, determined to stand her ground. Rachel's face contorted with rage at the defiance. She placed both hands on Amara's shoulders and shoved her hard against the seat. "I said sit down." The force of the push caught Amara off balance. As she fell back, her head once again slammed against the window, harder this time. Stars exploded in her vision, and nausea swept over her. She cried out in pain, raising her hands to protect herself from further assault. "You're putting on a show," Rachel accused, leaning in close. "If you don't stop this disruptive behavior immediately, I'll make sure security takes you into custody when we land." Through her pain, Amara realized the full horror of her situation. She was being physically abused by an authority figure with no witnesses except distant passengers who couldn't clearly see what was happening. Her phone was gone. Her father had no idea where she was or what was happening to her. And now Rachel was threatening to have her arrested. Desperate and terrified, Amara made a decision. She needed to find another crew member, someone who might help her. When Rachel turned briefly to address a passenger asking about the commotion, Amara bolted from her seat, darting past Rachel into the aisle. "Hey!" Rachel shouted, lunging after her. Amara managed only a few steps before Rachel grabbed the back of her shirt, yanking her backward with such force that Amara lost her footing. As she fell, Amara instinctively reached out to catch herself. Her hands missed the seat armrest, and her face struck it instead. A sickening crack echoed in her ears as pain exploded across her face. Warm liquid trickled over her lips, blood from her nose. The metallic taste filled her mouth as darkness edged her vision. The last thing Amara registered before losing consciousness was Rachel's voice, suddenly panicked rather than angry, calling for assistance. The world went black. Amara wasn't sure how long she was unconscious. It might have been seconds or minutes. She came to with a coppery taste of blood in her mouth and a pulsing pain across her face. Through blurry vision, she saw Rachel standing over her, a look of alarm replacing her previous smugness. "She attacked me," Rachel was saying to someone Amara couldn't see. "I was just defending myself." "That's not what it looked like from where I was sitting," a male voice replied, a passenger from a nearby row who had witnessed the assault. Jessica appeared, pushing past Rachel to kneel beside Amara. "Oh my God," she gasped, seeing the blood streaming from the girl's nose. "Are you okay, sweetie? Can you hear me?" Amara tried to nod, but stopped when pain shot through her head. "My nose hurts," she mumbled through the blood. Jessica turned to Rachel, her professional demeanor cracking. "What the hell happened, Rachel?" "She tried to run past me," Rachel defended herself. "I was just stopping her from creating a disturbance. She fell." "She's a child," Jessica hissed, pressing a cocktail napkin gently to Amara's bleeding nose. "Look what you've done." The commotion had drawn attention from throughout the cabin. Passengers stood in the aisles craning to see what was happening. Among them was Benjamin, who had come looking for Amara when she never returned to her seat. "Is that the girl from first class?" he asked, pushing forward. When he saw Amara on the floor, blood on her face and shirt, his expression hardened. "What did you do to her?" "Sir, please return to your seat," Rachel ordered, though her voice lacked its previous authority. "Not until someone explains why this child is bleeding," Benjamin insisted, pulling out his phone. "I'm recording this." Rachel reached for his phone. "That's not permitted." "Touch my property, and I'll add assault and destruction of evidence to the complaint I'm already filing," Benjamin warned, stepping back. "Several of us saw what's been happening on this flight." Other passengers began recording as well, phones aimed at the scene. A young black girl on the floor with a bloody nose, a flight attendant standing over her, looking guilty, and another flight attendant trying to provide first aid. "She attacked Rachel," a voice called out the woman from first class who had complained about Amara's seat. "That's a lie," countered another passenger. "I saw the whole thing. The flight attendant grabbed her and made her fall." Conflicting accounts flew across the cabin as passengers took sides. The situation was rapidly spiraling beyond Rachel's control. Jessica helped Amara to a sitting position. "Can you stand, sweetie? Let's get you cleaned up." With Jessica's support, Amara managed to get to her feet, though she felt dizzy and disoriented. The front of her shirt was stained with blood, and her nose continued to throb painfully. "I need to call the captain," Jessica said, reaching for the interphone. "That's not necessary," Rachel insisted, grabbing her arm. "I have this under control." "You've done enough," Jessica replied, pulling away. "This is a medical situation now, and possibly a legal one." As Jessica made the call to the cockpit, Rachel stood rigidly, her expression cycling between anger and fear as she realized the potential consequences of her actions. More passengers had gathered, many openly hostile toward her, others demanding explanations. Benjamin approached Amara, offering her a clean handkerchief for her nose. "You're going to be okay," he assured her. "We all saw what happened. She won't get away with this." Amara nodded weakly, tears mixing with blood on her face. The world still felt slightly tilted, but the fog in her mind was beginning to clear. She remembered her father waiting in San Francisco, unaware of the nightmare his daughter was experiencing. Somehow she had to let him know. "My phone," she mumbled to Benjamin. "She took my phone." "We'll get it back," he promised, "and we'll make sure your father knows exactly what happened here today." Word of the incident spread through the cabin like wildfire. Passengers from both economy and first class crowded the aisles, straining to see what was happening. Some recorded video on their phones, while others demanded explanations from the flight crew. Jessica had guided Amara to a jump seat in the galley area, away from prying eyes. She held an ice pack to the girl's swollen nose, murmuring reassurances. "The bleeding has mostly stopped," Jessica said, gently cleaning Amara's face with a damp cloth. "But you might have a bruise for a while." Amara sat in a daze, the events of the past few hours replaying in her mind. The discrimination, the isolation, the physical abuse. It seemed surreal that this could happen on a commercial flight in 2023. "Why did she hate me so much?" Amara asked softly. Jessica hesitated. "I don't know, sweetheart. But what she did was wrong. Completely wrong." Benjamin had followed them to the galley, his phone still recording. "I have evidence of what happened," he told Amara, "and I'm not the only one." Indeed, several passengers had captured Rachel's aggressive behavior on video. Those who had been seated near the confrontation were particularly vocal, describing to others how Rachel had grabbed Amara, causing her to fall and hit her face. Rachel remained in the main cabin, attempting to regain control of the situation. "Everyone needs to return to their seats immediately," she announced. "This is a safety issue. The only safety issue is you, a passenger, called out. You assaulted a child." "That is absolutely false," Rachel countered, though her voice lacked conviction. "She was disruptive and became physically aggressive when I attempted to restore order." Benjamin stepped out of the galley. "I have video evidence proving otherwise," he stated loudly, "starting from when you first discriminated against her in first class." A murmur ran through the crowd. Another passenger stepped forward, a black woman who had been seated in economy. "I saw you push her down," she said. "There was no provocation. You've been targeting that child since I first noticed her." "This is ridiculous," Rachel sputtered. "You're all exaggerating what happened." "Then you won't mind if we show our videos to the captain," Benjamin challenged. Rachel's face paled slightly. "The captain is busy flying the plane. This matter will be addressed upon landing." "It's being addressed now," Jessica contradicted her, emerging from the galley. "I've informed the captain of a serious incident involving a minor passenger. He's contacted dispatch, and they're notifying the girl's father." "You did what," Rachel hissed, grabbing Jessica's arm and pulling her aside. "That was completely unnecessary. I had the situation under control." "Control? Is that what you call giving a 12-year-old a bloody nose?" Jessica pulled her arm free. "This has gone way beyond a customer service issue, Rachel. What you did was assault." As the two flight attendants argued, Amara remained in the galley, holding the ice pack to her face. The physical pain had subsided somewhat, but the emotional trauma remained raw. She felt violated, humiliated, and afraid. Most of all, she wished her father was there. The cabin interphone rang and Jessica answered it. After a brief conversation, she hung up and turned to Rachel. "The captain wants to see you in the cockpit. Now." Rachel's confident facade cracked further. "You had no right to escalate this," she said bitterly before heading toward the front of the plane. With Rachel gone, Jessica returned to Amara. "How are you feeling? Do you need anything?" "My bag and my phone," Amara replied. "And I still really need to use the bathroom." "Of course," Jessica nodded. "I'll take you to the bathroom right away, and then I'll find your belongings." After Amara had finally relieved herself, the physical relief overwhelming after hours of discomfort, Jessica escorted her back to first class, where Benjamin and several other supportive passengers had saved her original seat. "Your backpack is still here," Benjamin said, indicating the bag under the seat. "But what about your phone?" "Rachel took it," Amara explained. "She said it was a security violation." Jessica frowned. "I'll check the galley safe. That's where confiscated items are supposed to be stored." While Jessica went to look for the phone, Benjamin showed Amara some of the video he'd captured. Though it was difficult to watch herself being mistreated, Amara felt a sense of validation, seeing proof that she hadn't done anything wrong. "My dad's going to be so upset," she said quietly. "He should be," Benjamin agreed. "No parent would want their child treated this way." Jessica returned with Amara's phone. "Found it," she said, handing it over. "The captain asked me to tell you that we've contacted the gate agents in San Francisco. Your father has been informed about an incident on board, and he'll be meeting the plane as soon as we land." Relief washed over Amara at the thought of seeing her father soon. She turned on her phone to find multiple missed calls and texts from him. Before she could respond, the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Mitchell. We'll be beginning our descent into San Francisco in approximately 20 minutes. At this time, I must ask all passengers to return to their assigned seats and prepare for landing." There was a brief pause before he continued. "I've been made aware of a serious incident involving one of our passengers. Please be advised that upon landing we'll be met by airline representatives who will need to speak with certain individuals. I ask for your patience and cooperation during this process." As a courtesy to all involved, particularly our minor passenger, I would request that any photos or videos taken during the flight not be shared on social media until the appropriate authorities have completed their investigation. The mention of authorities sent a ripple of conversation through the cabin. Jessica leaned down to speak quietly to Amara. "The captain has temporarily relieved Rachel of her duties for the remainder of the flight," she explained. "She'll be in the crew rest area during landing." This news provided Amara with a small sense of security. At least, she wouldn't have to face her tormentor again during the flight. As the plane began its descent into San Francisco, passengers fastened their seatbelts and prepared for landing. Many continued to discuss the incident, expressing outrage and sympathy. Some came by Amara's seat to offer kind words or small gestures of support, a candy bar, a hand-drawn card, contact information in case she needed witnesses later. Through the window, Amara could see the San Francisco Bay coming into view, the Golden Gate Bridge, visible in the distance. Under normal circumstances, she would have been excited for her visit. Now all she wanted was to be safely with her father. The plane touched down smoothly on the runway, taxiing toward the gate. As they approached, Amara could see several people waiting on the jet bridge, airline representatives in uniform, and standing apart from them, a tall figure in a suit that she instantly recognized. "That's my dad," she whispered, pointing. The captain's voice came over the intercom once more. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to San Francisco International Airport. The local time is 2:45 p.m. and the temperature is 68 degrees. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened until the aircraft has come to a complete stop and the seatbelt sign has been turned off." There was a pause before he added, "We'll be allowing a special boarding before general deplaning begins. Thank you for your patience." As the plane came to a stop at the gate, an unusual announcement followed. "Mr. Malcolm Ellington, our sincere apologies. We have your daughter." The words sent a chill down Amara's spine, reminding her of the entire ordeal. But they also meant that help had arrived. Through the windows, passengers could see activity on the jet bridge. The cabin fell silent with anticipation. The aircraft door opened with a hydraulic hiss. Rather than the usual gate agent, a distinguished black man in an impeccably tailored suit stepped aboard. Malcolm Johnson's presence commanded immediate attention, 6 feet tall, with broad shoulders, sharp features, and an expression of barely contained fury. Behind him stood 2 airline executives in business attire, their faces grim, and an airport police officer in uniform. The tableau spoke volumes about the seriousness with which the situation was being handled. Rachel, who had been summoned from the crew rest area for landing, froze when she saw the entourage. Her eyes darted from Malcolm to the airline representatives, recognition slowly dawning on her face. "Mr. Johnson," one of the airline executives began, "we can't express how deeply—" Malcolm raised a hand, silencing the apology before it fully formed. His gaze swept the cabin until it landed on Amara in the 3rd row. The anger in his expression melted into concern as he took in her tear-stained face, the dried blood on her shirt, and the ice pack she still held to her swollen nose. Daddy Amara called out, unbuckling her seatbelt. Malcolm moved swiftly down the aisle, passengers shifting to make way. When he reached Amara, he knelt beside her seat, gently taking her face in his hands. "Baby girl," he said, softly examining her injuries. "What did they do to you?" Tears welled in Amara's eyes, again not from pain or fear this time, but from relief. "It was horrible, Dad," she whispered. "That flight attendant. She wouldn't let me use the bathroom. She took my phone. She pushed me." Malcolm's jaw tightened as he pulled his daughter into a protective embrace. Over her shoulder, his gaze locked on Rachel, who had backed up against the galley wall. "Which one?" he asked quietly. Amara pointed at Rachel. "Her." Malcolm stood slowly, keeping one hand on Amara's shoulder. "You did this to my daughter." His voice was controlled, but vibrated with fury. Rachel's demeanor had completely transformed. Gone was the arrogant authority figure who had terrorized Amara for hours. In her place stood a visibly nervous woman, suddenly aware of the gravity of her actions. Mr. Johnson, she began, her voice unnaturally high. There's been a misunderstanding. Your daughter was being disruptive, and I was simply following protocol to— Stop, Malcolm cut her off. I don't want to hear your excuses. He turned to Benjamin, who had been watching silently. You helped my daughter, Benjamin nodded. I tried, sir. I have videos of some of what happened. I'd like to see them, please, Malcolm requested. As Benjamin played back the footage on his phone, Malcolm's expression darkened further. The video clearly showed Rachel's discriminatory treatment, her aggressive handling of Amara, and the aftermath of the physical confrontation. When the video ended, Malcolm handed the phone back to Benjamin. Thank you, he said, sincerely. Would you be willing to share that with the authorities? Absolutely, Benjamin confirmed. And I'm not the only one who recorded what happened. Several other passengers nodded or raised their hands, indicating they also had evidence. Malcolm turned to the airline executives who had been watching with horrified expressions. I want a full investigation. I want her, he pointed at Rachel, suspended immediately pending that investigation. And I want a formal apology from your airline's CEO by the end of the day. The senior executive nodded quickly. Of course, Mr. Johnson. We're taking this extremely seriously. Miss Whitman will be removed from duty immediately, and we'll launch a full investigation. Miss Whitman, Malcolm repeated, turning back to Rachel. Is that your name? Rachel's face had lost all color. Rachel Whitman, she confirmed quietly. Malcolm studied her for a moment. Well, Miss Whitman, you should know that I'm not just a concerned father. I'm also the CEO of Horizon Technologies, which happens to be one of your airline's largest corporate accounts. A collective murmur ran through the cabin as passengers recognized the name. Horizon Technologies was a major player in the tech industry, and Malcolm Johnson's recent appointment as its first black CEO had made headlines across the country. Rachel's eyes widened in shock. Mr. Johnson, I had no idea that my daughter was related to someone with influence, Malcolm finished for her. And that makes your behavior better or worse. Rachel had no response. If you had known who she was, would you have treated her differently? Malcolm pressed. Because that's the problem, isn't it? You saw a young black girl traveling alone and decided she was less worthy of respect and dignity than the other passengers. The truth of his words hung in the air. Rachel looked at the floor, unable to meet his gaze. Malcolm turned back to the airline executives. I want to be clear about something. While I will certainly be reconsidering our company's relationship with your airline, my primary concern right now is as a father. What happened today could have happened to any child of color, whether or not their parent was in a position of influence. That's what makes it so disturbing. The executives nodded soberly. Now Malcolm continued, I'd like to get my daughter off this plane and have her injuries properly documented and treated. The airport police officer, who had been standing quietly at the cabin entrance, stepped forward. Sir, we'll need statements from both you and your daughter, as well as any witnesses willing to provide them. We're treating this as a potential assault case. Good, Malcolm replied. We'll cooperate fully. Jessica, who had been standing nearby, approached cautiously. Mr. Johnson, I want to apologize for not intervening sooner. I should have done more. Malcolm regarded her thoughtfully. You provided aid to my daughter when she was injured. That counts for something. But yes, you should have done more. Jessica nodded, accepting the rebuke. If there's anything I can do now, you can give a full, honest statement about everything you witnessed, Malcolm told her. As arrangements were made for deplaning, Rachel was escorted off the aircraft, first accompanied by one of the executives and the police officer. Passengers watched in silence as she was led away, her career and reputation in tatters. Malcolm gathered Amara's belongings, keeping his arm around her shoulders as they prepared to leave the plane. Before they reached the door, Benjamin approached once more. Mr. Johnson, I gave your daughter my business card. I'm an attorney with Baker & Associates in San Francisco. If you need any assistance navigating the legal aspects of this situation, my firm would be honored to help. Malcolm shook his hand firmly. Thank you, Mr. Hayes. Benjamin Hayes. Thank you, Mr. Hayes. for everything you did for Amara today." As they finally exited the aircraft, passengers spontaneously began to applaud not for Malcolm's status or influence, but for a father protecting his child for justice, beginning to be served, and perhaps for the hope that such incidents would become less common in the future. 3 days after the flight from Atlanta, Malcolm Johnson sat in a conference room at the headquarters of Meridian Airlines. Across the table sat CEO Robert Pearson, flanked by the airline's chief legal counsel and head of customer experience. The atmosphere was tense, with the executives visibly uncomfortable. Malcolm had insisted that Amara remain in San Francisco with him rather than continue their planned activities. The trauma of her experience required attention, and a child psychologist had already conducted 2 sessions with her. The bruising on her nose had darkened, providing visceral evidence of what she had endured. Mr. Johnson Pearson began, "First, let me reiterate how deeply sorry we are for what happened to your daughter. It represents a complete failure on our part, and we take full responsibility." Malcolm nodded slightly but remained silent, his expression impassive. Pearson continued, "We've concluded our initial investigation, and I wanted to share the findings with you personally. Rachel Whitman has been terminated effective immediately. Her actions violated numerous company policies and, potentially, the law." "And the other flight attendant," Malcolm inquired. "Jessica Parker, I believe." "Ms. Parker has been placed on administrative leave while we complete our investigation," the legal counsel explained. "While she eventually aided your daughter, we're examining why she didn't intervene sooner." Malcolm leaned forward. "My concern extends beyond individual employees, Mr. Pearson. This incident reveals systemic issues within your organization. What's being done to address those?" The head of customer experience cleared her throat. "We're implementing several measures immediately. All flight crews will undergo enhanced diversity and inclusion training. We're revising our protocols for handling situations involving unaccompanied minors. And we're establishing a zero-tolerance policy for discriminatory behavior." "These sound like standard corporate responses," Malcolm observed. "I'm interested in real, substantive change." Pearson shifted uncomfortably. "What would you suggest, Mr. Johnson?" "I'd suggest you listen to the experiences of passengers of color who fly your airline," Malcolm replied evenly. "I'd suggest you examine your hiring practices, your promotion patterns, and your company culture. And I'd suggest you consider the message you're sending when incidents like this aren't prevented in the first place." Malcolm opened a folder he'd brought with him, removing several papers. "I've had my team collect data on discrimination complaints filed against Meridian over the past 5 years. The numbers are troubling, particularly when compared to industry averages." He slid the papers across the table. Pearson glanced at them, his expression growing more somber. "Furthermore," Malcolm continued, "we've collected statements from 27 passengers who witnessed various aspects of the incident involving my daughter. Their accounts paint a disturbing picture of escalating discrimination that went unchallenged by your staff." Mr. Johnson Pearson said carefully, "I want you to know that we're prepared to offer a significant settlement to avoid." "I'm not interested in being bought off," Malcolm interrupted. "This isn't about money. It's about accountability and change." The executives exchanged glances. "What are you looking for, then?" the legal counsel asked. Malcolm leaned back in his chair. "3 things. First, a public acknowledgement of what happened, including the racial component. No vague corporate statements about an unfortunate incident. Second, a comprehensive overhaul of your training and response protocols developed in consultation with civil rights experts. And third, a commitment to increasing diversity in your leadership ranks with clear metrics and timeline." "That's quite extensive," Pearson hedged. "So was the trauma my daughter experienced," Malcolm countered. "And she's not alone. The difference is that Amara has a father with the resources and platform to demand action. Most victims of discrimination don't." Malcolm stood, buttoning his suit jacket. "I'll give you 48 hours to consider my proposals. After that, we'll be proceeding with both civil action and a public awareness campaign." Horizon Technologies will also be re-evaluating our corporate travel policies, which currently allocate over $12 million annually to Meridian. The executives rose hastily. There's no need for that time frame, Mr. Johnson Pearson assured him. We're committed to addressing these issues. Perhaps we could set up a task force with your input, of course. 48 hours, Malcolm repeated firmly. Actions, not committees. As Malcolm turned to leave, the door to the conference room opened. A security officer escorted in a familiar figure, Benjamin Hayes, the attorney who had helped Amara on the flight. Mr. Hayes, Malcolm greeted him with surprise. I wasn't expecting to see you here. Benjamin nodded respectfully. Mr. Johnson, I was asked to attend a meeting regarding the incident, though it seems you're just concluding. Mr. Hayes has been providing some legal perspective, Pearson explained hastily. As a witness to the events, Malcolm studied the executives with new understanding. I see. You've been gathering your defense. Not at all, Pearson protested. We're trying to get a complete picture. Then you won't mind if Mr. Hayes joins us for the remainder of our discussion, Malcolm suggested, since he was indeed a key witness. The executives had little choice but to agree. Benjamin took a seat beside Malcolm. Mr. Hayes, Malcolm began, in your professional opinion, based on what you witnessed on that flight, would you characterize the treatment of my daughter as discriminatory? Benjamin didn't hesitate. Without question, Miss Whitman's behavior showed clear racial bias from the initial seating verification through to the physical confrontation. In my 20 years of practicing law, it's one of the more blatant examples I've seen in a commercial setting. The legal counsel frowned. That's a subjective interpretation. It's an expert opinion, Benjamin corrected, and one I'd be prepared to offer under oath if necessary. The dynamic in the room had shifted. What had begun as an attempt to manage a potentially costly incident was evolving into a moment of genuine accountability. Perhaps Pearson conceded we don't need 48 hours after all. Mr. Johnson, I believe we can meet the conditions you've outlined. Malcolm nodded. I'll have my team draft an agreement reflecting our discussion. And Mr. Pearson, this isn't just about Amara. It's about ensuring that no passenger faces discrimination on your airline again. As the meeting concluded, Malcolm and Benjamin walked together toward the elevator. Thank you for your candor in there, Malcolm said. It made a difference. Benjamin shook his head. No thanks necessary. What happened to your daughter was wrong on every level. They needed to hear that from someone who wasn't personally affected. Would your firm be interested in helping develop the training protocols we discussed? Malcolm asked. Given your expertise in discrimination cases, we'd be honored, Benjamin replied, though I suspect this is just the beginning of a longer journey for Meridian. Malcolm nodded thoughtfully. Change rarely happens without pressure, but when it does happen, it can be transformative. As they reached the lobby, Malcolm checked his watch. I should get back to Amara. The psychologist suggested maintaining regular routines to help her process the trauma. How is she doing? Benjamin asked, with genuine concern. She's resilient, Malcolm replied, a hint of pride in his voice. Angry and hurt, but also determined to make meaning from what happened. She's already talking about wanting to help other kids who experience discrimination. Like father, like daughter, Benjamin observed. Malcolm smiled for the first time that day. That's the greatest compliment you could give me. As they parted ways, Malcolm felt a renewed sense of purpose. What had begun as a personal battle for justice for his daughter was evolving into something larger, a chance to create meaningful change in how corporations handled issues of discrimination. It wouldn't erase what Amara had experienced, but it might prevent others from facing similar treatment in the future. And that, he reflected, was a legacy worth fighting for. 3 months after the incident that had shaken both Amara and her father, national news outlets carried the story of Meridian Airlines' sweeping new anti-discrimination initiatives. Headlines proclaimed it the most comprehensive overhaul in the industry, while analysts debated whether other airlines would follow suit. In a sun-filled conference room at Horizon Technologies headquarters, Amara Johnson sat beside her father watching the coverage on a large screen. At 12 years old, she still carried the emotional weight of her experience, but she had found strength in speaking out about it. "There's CNN," Malcolm noted, increasing the volume. The anchor's voice filled the room. Meridian Airlines CEO Robert Pearson announced today the implementation of the Johnson Protocol, named after Amara Johnson, the young passenger whose mistreatment by a flight attendant earlier this year prompted the airline's reckoning with racial bias. The protocol establishes new standards for employee training, incident reporting, and accountability measures. The screen showed Pearson at a press conference. "We failed Miss Johnson," he stated plainly. "And in doing so, we failed to live up to our responsibility to provide safe, respectful service to all passengers, regardless of race, gender, age, or background. The changes we're announcing today represent our commitment to ensuring such failures never happen again." Malcolm muted the television and turned to Amara. "How does it feel to see this?" Amara considered the question carefully. "Good, I guess, but also weird. Like, why did something so awful have to happen to me before they decided to change things?" Her father nodded. "That's a very insightful question. Too often, institutions don't address problems until they're forced to. That's why what you're doing is so important." What Amara was doing had evolved far beyond anything they had initially imagined. In the weeks following the incident, as the story gained traction in the media, Amara had begun sharing her experience on a social media account managed by her parents. The hashtag number #FlyingWhileBlack had resonated with thousands who had faced similar discrimination. "Dad," Amara asked, "is Rachel Whitman really going to jail?" Malcolm put his arm around his daughter's shoulders. "The district attorney has filed charges for assault and child endangerment. Whether she serves time will be up to the courts. But yes, she's facing serious consequences." The legal proceedings against Rachel Whitman had moved forward steadily. Beyond her termination from Meridian, she faced criminal charges and a civil lawsuit. Her initial attempts to deny wrongdoing had crumbled in the face of overwhelming evidence from multiple passengers. Jessica Parker had testified against her former colleague, admitting that Rachel had displayed problematic behavior toward minority passengers on previous flights. This testimony, combined with the video evidence, had created an airtight case. "What about Jessica?" Amara asked. "She didn't help me at first, but she was nice to me after I got hurt." "She's cooperating with the investigation," Malcolm explained. "After completing additional training, she's been reinstated, but with probationary status. She's also volunteered to help develop the new flight attendant protocols." Their conversation was interrupted by Malcolm's assistant, who knocked lightly on the door. "Mr. Johnson Benjamin Hayes is here for your meeting." "Send him in, please," Malcolm replied. Benjamin entered, briefcase in hand and a warm smile for Amara. "There's the young advocate herself," he greeted her. "I just saw the news. Congratulations to both of you." In the months since the incident, Benjamin had become more than just an ally in their legal battle. His firm had taken a leading role in developing the new training protocols for Meridian, and he had personally helped prepare Amara for her testimony in the proceedings against Rachel Whitman. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" he asked Amara. Tomorrow was the Transportation Equity Conference, where Amara would deliver her first public speech. The Johnson Foundation for Equal Treatment, newly established by Malcolm, was sponsoring the event, bringing together industry leaders, civil rights advocates, and policymakers. "I think so," Amara replied, though her voice betrayed nervousness. "Dad helped me practice a lot." "You're going to be amazing," Benjamin assured her. "Just speak from your heart, like you did when we prepared your testimony." Malcolm checked his watch. "We should head to the foundation office for the final preparations. Amara, why don't you gather your things while Mr. Hayes and I discuss a few details?" When Amara had left the room, Malcolm turned to Benjamin. "Any update on the class action?" The legal action against Meridian had expanded beyond Amara's case. Benjamin's firm had identified 27 other passengers who had experienced similar discrimination on Meridian flights over the past 3 years. The resulting class action lawsuit had prompted the airline's swift agreement to the reform measures. "The settlement terms have been finalized," Benjamin confirmed. "Meridian will establish a $10 million fund for victims of discrimination, implement all the protocol measures we developed and submit to independent monitoring for 5 years. Malcolm nodded with satisfaction. And the Foundation's role? As agreed, the Johnson Foundation will oversee the implementation of the training programs and receive quarterly reports on progress and compliance. What had begun as a personal quest for justice had evolved into a structural approach to combating discrimination in the airline industry. Malcolm had committed substantial resources to the cause, leveraging his position as a tech CEO to influence corporate practices beyond a single incident. Amara returned with her backpack, ready to leave. As they walked to the elevator, Malcolm placed his hands on her shoulders. "I'm proud of you, you know that," he said softly. "Many people would have wanted to forget what happened, to move on and try to put it behind them, but you chose to speak up, to turn your pain into purpose." Amara looked up at her father, her eyes reflecting a maturity beyond her years. "I just keep thinking about other kids like me who don't have a dad, who's a CEO, who would help them." "That's exactly why we created the foundation," Malcolm replied, "so that everyone has someone in their corner." The next day, Amara stood at a podium adjusted for her height, facing an audience of transportation industry executives, civil rights attorneys, and media representatives. Despite her nervousness, her voice was clear as she began to speak. "3 months ago, I boarded a plane excited to visit my dad. I never imagined that flight would change my life, or that it would eventually lead to changes that might help thousands of other passengers." She recounted her experience without flinching from the painful details, her composure remarkable for someone so young. When she described the moment of regaining consciousness with a bloody nose, several audience members visibly winced. "What happened to me wasn't just about one flight attendant who didn't like me because of the color of my skin," Amara continued. "It was about a system that allowed her to discriminate without anyone stopping her. That's why the Johnson Protocol isn't just about better training or stricter rules. It's about changing the culture of silence that lets discrimination happen in the first place." In the months since the incident, Amara had spoken with dozens of other children and adults who had faced similar experiences. Their stories had helped shape the protocol that now bore her name. "I don't want special treatment when I fly," she concluded. "I just want the same respect and safety that every passenger deserves. And I won't stop speaking out until that's the reality for everyone, no matter what they look like or where they come from." The audience rose in a standing ovation as Amara stepped away from the podium. Malcolm embraced his daughter, his eyes shining with pride. The following week, Amara boarded another flight, this time with her father beside her. They were traveling to New York for meetings with other airlines interested in adopting the Johnson Protocol. As they settled into their seats, Amara noticed a young black girl, perhaps 9 or 10, traveling alone in the row across from them. The girl looked nervous, clutching her boarding pass tightly. When a flight attendant approached to check her ticket, Amara watched carefully. The attendant, a woman with a name tag reading Melissa, smiled warmly at the child, offering her a tour of the cockpit before takeoff and explaining the features of her seat. Amara caught the girl's eye and smiled encouragingly. When the flight attendant moved on, Amara leaned across the aisle. "First time flying alone?" she asked kindly. The girl nodded. "I'm a little scared." "It's okay to be nervous," Amara assured her. "I'm Amara. If you need anything during the flight, my dad and I are right here." Relief spread across the girl's face. "Thanks. I'm Zoe." As the plane prepared for takeoff, Malcolm watched the interaction with a mixture of emotions. The trauma his daughter had experienced would never fully disappear, but neither would the strength and compassion it had awakened in her. The Johnson Protocol wouldn't eliminate discrimination overnight. No single policy or program could accomplish that, but it represented a significant step toward accountability and awareness in an industry that had too often failed passengers of color. More importantly, Amara's willingness to speak out to transform her personal pain into public advocacy had created ripples that continued to spread. From one terrifying flight had emerged a movement for change, led by a 12-year-old girl who had refused to be silenced. As the plane accelerated down the runway, Amara gazed out the window at the world opening up before her. The journey toward justice she was learning was not a single flight, but a lifelong commitment, one she was now prepared to make. This powerful story highlights crucial lessons about discrimination, courage, and institutional change. First, racism often persists because bystanders remain silent. Jessica's initial inaction shows how complicity allows discrimination to flourish. Second, speaking truth to power requires tremendous courage, especially from those most vulnerable. Amara's bravery in standing up to authority despite her young age demonstrates exceptional strength of character. Third, institutional change rarely happens voluntarily. It typically requires pressure from those with leverage. Malcolm's position gave him influence, but he used it not just for his daughter, but for all victims of discrimination. Fourth, transforming trauma into advocacy creates meaning from suffering. Amara's decision to share her story rather than hiding it led to systemic reforms that would help countless others. Finally, the story reminds us that justice isn't just about punishing wrongdoers, it's about creating systems that prevent discrimination in the first place. The Johnson Protocol represents not just a response to one incident, but a pathway to more equitable treatment for everyone. What racial discrimination experiences have you witnessed or experienced while traveling? Share your story in the comments below. Has anyone ever stood up for you when you faced discrimination? Or have you intervened when seeing someone else treated unfairly? Your experiences matter and can help others feel less alone. Please like this video if Amara's story moved. You subscribe for more powerful stories of resilience against discrimination, and share to spread awareness about the reality of racism in everyday situations. Thank you for watching, and remember that your voice can be the catalyst for meaningful change in the fight against racism.